Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Jason Salyer, and this is my good friend Joe. And today I would like to discuss what can we expect from a decaying society. So let's say, whatever the scenario is, it doesn't matter. We run out of diesel fuel, and if we run out of diesel fuel, that means that we run out of gasoline. If we run out of gasoline, people can stop moving from A to B. Food stops going to the grocery stores. Chaos ensues. I'm not saying that's going to happen, and I'm prayerful, hopeful every single day of my life that doesn't happen and we continue living the wonderful lives that we do right now. But we just don't know. But if that was to happen, what kind of things can we expect? And you have been in places around the world that have collapsed.
Yeah.
Right? What does it look like?
So I've been to a couple places. One place was a failed state before I got there, and I just showed up. It's been a failed state for decades. I witnessed basically the collapse of a capital city. I was there during the collapse of the capital city. So
we went from functional city
collapse, boom,
operational to boom.
Boom. Then the whole country went.
Uh-huh.
So once the capital went, the country went. I mean, ostensibly the rural areas were rural and they weren't necessarily affected. Other than us showing up being an army. But when the capital went, the country went. That's where most of the centralized authority was, and that authority, like in this particular instance, food distribution was tied into the centralized authority, and the people in the country, it's Iraq, right? Baghdad. So I was there when Baghdad collapsed. They had a food distribution system that kind of went away, and these people were pretty dependent on the centralized authority for their day-to-day stuff.
Beforehand?
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of countries are like that. If they have a generous welfare system, I'll leave it at that. When that central authority collapses, the people will be conditioned, not for handouts, but they'll be conditioned for a certain logistic footprint, a certain economic system, right? And then poof, that's not how it works anymore.
There's a period of adaptation that has to happen.
Well, that's, I mean, you could make the argument that's what's happening in the U.S. It's the difference between decay, which I think we're in, you look around, versus collapse, where the gig is up, everybody knows. Mm-hmm. We're no longer in the old system, we're in whatever's new.
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah. So what do you think's? I think I know what your answer is, but what do you think is going to be our situation where it's just, boom, big thing happens, and then just, apocalypse now kind of thing, or do you think just gradual fall apart?
Well, my opinion is that what we're experiencing in the United States is purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. It's not an accident. It's malicious in nature, and doesn't have your best interest in mind.
It pisses me off. Like
it is what
you know what I mean? Like what? Why can't people just? I can't relate to that because I don't. It makes no sense to me because I genuinely want the best for other people. I want people to be successful. I want people to be happy. I can't understand.
There's two good groups of people. There's good people and bad people.
Yeah.
And I would qualify the bad people as those who go for what they want at any expense.
Don't care about anyone but themselves.
So,
it's infuriating. Yeah.
So they, a good person and a bad person both want to eat a good meal.
Yeah.
Right? But the good person will earn it, the bad person will acquire it.
Take it.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so getting back, I got off subject there a little bit. So what does it look like? So in your experience, you said basically food distribution falls apart.
In this particular place, yeah. So food, fuel, water, all those things. Look, people take that stuff for granted. Look around you now. We take it for granted here in the United States. We take running water for granted in the United States. Mm-hmm. When Rome lost running water, I think it was like 2,000 years almost before. It's not that much. Maybe 1,500, at least 1,000 years before running water was a everyday staple in Western nations, at least.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted now. So a lot of those things, and another thing that falls apart is public sanitation.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a big one.
It's a big one. Public sanitation. Look, none of that stuff is sexy. Digging latrines and
Your
and
urban
houses
areas
and
is
stuff.
what I think of the problem with that.
Yep, and disease spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
So there's no way to kind of carry the disease stuff into a healthy location. So some of this stuff just piles up.
If
And it gets out of hand
if the
quick.
toilet stopped flushing,
They're in trouble.
that's a big problem.
Yeah. So now they had a lot of bad hygiene habits over there anyway.
Mhm.
Like especially in Iraq and basically any second or third world country is going to have hygiene issues.
So maybe they're a little more tolerant to it than we would be.
No, not really. You think so? There are certain disease processes that I think they're probably maybe a little more resistant to. But cholera is cholera.
Everybody suffers.
Yeah,
from it.
everybody gets it. Typhus is typhus. You know,
Mhm.
these things break out.
Mhm.
So, not a lot you can do about it except keep your sanitation up.
Yeah.
And then aggressively treat people who get it. But so anyway, when it collapses, what you'll find is overnight. The overwhelming majority of the population is unfed, unwatered, unkept. They're not secure, and they know it.
Mm-hmm.
And the tendency in an urban setting is not. I don't want to call them riots. They're not protests, but they are very gimme, angry and aggressive gatherings at distribution locations. Does that make sense?
Grabs for whatever they can get.
Yeah, so
Desperate
like
grabs.
when Baghdad fell, the U.S. declared martial law. I forget for how long. It was a couple days at least, maybe longer. It didn't affect me, so I don't remember. But the city was under martial law. Looting was a thing, massive looting. Just stuff getting looted you wouldn't think it would, you know. But if you're starving and this, why are you looting a museum? You know, it's because they think later on they're going to sell it to get food and water, right?
Yeah.
Because the black market's going to pop up.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you're going to see the overwhelming majority of an urban population be basically caught with their pants down once the collapse happens. Like you have your nation state and a common set of expectations on Monday. On Tuesday, there's a collapse and it's pandemonium.
Wow. How fast? Like just literally overnight kind of thing, or does it take?
Well, for us, militarily, it was overnight because the moment we basically started doing thunder runs in the city, it was over.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it was all over but the crying. The United States, I think if, you know, the people who are behind all this have their way, it would be that slow decline, boil the frog. That's what they want.
You won't even notice it. Yeah.
Well, you notice it, but it's happening so slow
gradually, yeah.
that other folks... It's a lack of genuine empathy in the everyday person,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not bothering me, so it's not a problem, and that's, you know. But what they don't realize is a lot of these things, that slow collapse, it starts at the bottom, starts working its way up. Well, the people who are calling the shots, they're at the top, so they feel it last.
Right.
They feel it last.
Yeah.
So they don't care who it's affecting. It's not affecting them, and that's the end of it. But we'll notice it. The working class folks always notice it first. Like in our case, the inflation, you know, obviously we have supply chain issues. Can't get parts.
Sure.
Like
That's everybody's felt that. I mean, you can't get anything. It used to be so easy to go get. Like last example I could think of is a motorcycle tire.
Mm-hmm.
I could go get whatever tire I wanted whenever I wanted. It could be delivered here, you know, in a few days. Not anymore. You could, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Take what you can get.
there's different economic conditions here than, you know, pre-war Iraq. The U.S. over the last few years has centralized more and more of its critical infrastructure. The best example I could give you are USDA butchering facilities. Like why? Absolutely every county can manage its own butchering. There's no need for a USDA facility. It's making it very difficult for our beef farmers. And what happens when we collapse? Well, the USDA will go away and everybody will just start butchering their cows.
Yeah.
So why don't we just prepare for that?
Why don't we just do that? Wouldn't that make more sense?
And then we don't have to worry about the USDA, you know, making beef profitable for China instead of America.
Right?
That's it. That's
all right,
what it is. So going back to Iraq, a lot of those facilities, they just basically stopped working. And after it took a week or two, it took took a week or two of really trying to get a grasp on the security of it. But once we got security in place, it was a lot easier to kind of restore civil services to the areas. Like, we could do it.
Sure.
We weren't going to get them up to U.S. standards. We could just get them back up to what they were doing before we showed up.
So yeah, it does. But so from your perspective, it's a little bit different than. Can you try to paint maybe a picture of what it would be like for the individual, the citizen of the place living there at that time? What was it like for them? What does a day look like for them under that situation?
Well, I would imagine they're going to stress about the same things we are. Look, everybody's worried about their family. Everybody's worried about their kids. Food, water, shelter.
Where's it going to come from?
Where's it going to come from? Right. Those are pretty much universal needs amongst the human species. And once there's a collapse scenario, a lot of the political, national discussion, that just goes right out the window. It's like, feed me.
Yeah, nobody cares
any
of the
who
nonsense.
You voted for at this point.
Garbage,
it's about survival. It's about survival, security, and provisions. But a lot of them, I would say most of them were pretty panicked. I would imagine most Americans would be pretty panicked.
Oh, yeah.
And most Americans, they would be panicked because they're not, I'm not saying prepare for a collapse, but like our grandparents would have normally just kept a full pantry.
Sure.
They would have normally just kept.
They weren't preppers.
They weren't
just
preppers.
People.
That was the routine.
Yeah.
My parents in particular were raised by Depression era. My grandparents are Depression era. They grew up in the Depression, so they raised their kids, my parents, to set a little back for lean times. And in the United States, we kind of have this very material consumer, just buy. The stores will always be full. There's no need to stockpile.
Right.
And I think National Geographic even went a step further and set that stupid show up, Doomsday Preppers, just to make people who prepare themselves
ludicrous,
look crazy.
Yeah.
They always pick the most
insane
folks with the most insane plans,
yeah.
and they try to, I believe, at least convey the message that if you set some back for a rainy day, you're some type of
you're a crazy person. I only watched, I think, maybe one episode of the show, because when it first came out, I thought, okay, all right, I'll check this out. I'm interested in these kind of things. I think I watched half of the episode, and there's this guy preparing for the alien attacks, and
oh sure,
yeah, it was just the stuff he was doing was crazy. Anyway, so all right, getting back on subject. So
back to Baghdad.
Yep.
Right. One of the things the Iraqis have better than what we have is their tribal and their community systems. Like, American communities are shattered. Like, they're everywhere. Everybody's an island among themselves.
Nobody knows their neighbors.
And you didn't have that over there.
Oh, really?
No. So everybody knew everybody in their neighborhood.
Okay.
And if you were in if you weren't in the neighborhood of your people, you were at least adjacent to it. And your group of people, whoever you belong to, for sure had a spokesman, like either a sheikh, an imam. So they had well-established communities, and it made it much easier to restore order. Instead of dealing with 1,000 individuals, I could just deal with the sheikh.
Just talk with one
guy. I could deal with the imam, and as long as we could come up with some type of an agreement or accord, he could execute those plans within his community, and it worked great.
Okay.
So I would imagine the equivalent in the U.S. would be potentially churches.
Yeah, local pastors. What about government officials and things like that?
Worthless.
You don't think anybody
I
would
wouldn't
listen
bank
to
on not a single politician in the United States, not a one. Like, self-reliance is a virtue, but what you seek is interdependency in a community, right? We should all be self-reliant as a virtue, but you can't be self-reliant.
Yeah.
We are by nature community animals, social animals.
Yeah.
So even if you could acquire enough provisions for 25 years, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
You'd be in a self-imposed prison.
Sure.
So the idea is to thrive, not to survive. And you're only going to do that, especially for your kids. You're only going to do that if you're integrated and interdependent in the correct community setting. Again, 30, 40 years ago, this would have been fairly easy to achieve. I know when I grew up, we had huge family reunions, and then social media and this, and Americans have a habit of giving up their social fabric, their communities, their churches, their extended family. They'll walk away from those three things for a pay raise in the next town over.
Wow.
I would take the pay cut in favor of a good church, good community, and an extended family any day of the week.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. No questions asked. The Iraqis had that, and it did make a big difference.
Okay.
So while they were dependent on, basic staples, food, gas, and water, they did have a very intact community setting that kind of helped them pull through it. Actually, pretty quick, I thought. They're pretty resilient.
Okay.
They're pretty resilient. Now, I don't know if their community setting, the communities that they had set up were because of the conditions they were living in, religious concern. Before we showed up, Iraq, from my perspective, was pretty secular. I mean, Islam is obviously the go-to religion for the nation, but by and large, look, they had liquor stores and bars. Girls were wearing jeans and makeups in some places, but not all places. Afterwards, everything got very Sharia very quick.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they kind of had those social pieces in place. I don't know. I think we used to have that, and I think we let the digital age tear that apart for convenience. So it's hard to say that what they have or whatever their social system is leads to that, and ours doesn't. Ours did. I mean, I remember growing up and the same thing that they'd have over there. If you went to a funeral, there's tons of people there. Everybody knew each other. You don't see that much anymore. Mm-hmm. But the community's a big part in the wake of a collapse. Keep in mind, if you need insulin, somebody else needs insulin, there's going to be plenty of people trying to get insulin out, as an example. Same thing with emergency medications. Always have extra, always have some on hand. There was a time, I don't know if you could do this now, everything wants you dependent. Nobody wants you self-reliant. Mm-hmm. They will give you just enough medications to come back and refill in a week, right? Yeah. But there was a time you could go to your provider and ask them for a 6-week prescription. I'm going to travel. Sure. I need to keep 30 days on hand in case, whatever. They used to do that. I don't know if they do it now. I'd ask. It's worth it. But my biggest concern would be chronic prescription medication requirements in the family. Yeah.
I've been talking about that for a while now to viewers and talking about if there's anything you can do. Look, there's a lot of people that are on prescribed medications that have to be. Like, if you don't take this medication, you're going to die.
You're going to die.
I get that. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people that are hooked on prescribed medications that don't require it if they would make positive lifestyle changes.
100% I agree. 100%.
Probably the majority. I don't know that to be a fact, but I would say the majority.
We're as a nation, we're grossly over-medicated. Mm-hmm. We're grossly over-medicated. I'm not anti-medicine, but we are grossly over-medicated. Yeah. And the cold hard truth is, if there is a collapse, there's going to be death. Mm. People are not going to make it. Yeah. And I wish I could give you the magic answer. You need this, and this is what's going to keep Nan alive. Can't give you that answer. Yeah. It's going to be difficult. So obviously you want to prevent the collapse.
Sure.
The way we do that, in my opinion, in the United States is stop turfing off the responsibility of running our towns to these bought men. That's all they are. They're bought men. We're too busy running our lives, being an island amongst ourselves, among us, whatever the saying is, being islands of ourselves, to pay attention to what's going on around us. But having the right leadership in your community will go a long way towards resiliency and readiness. Mm-hmm. But you should be ready. Look at Union County, where we live. The overwhelming majority of the population are baby boomers. They're elderly. They're senior citizens. What's going to happen if the power goes out this winter for a week? Nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Nobody's talking about it. You're just a crazy prepper for bringing it up. It's like, look, I'm fit and I got what I need. If the power goes out for a month or two, I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about the bulk of the population around here. We've abandoned our elderly to Uber Eats. Mm-hmm. But again, it goes back to having those strong community ties.
Right.
Where are your kids?
Yeah.
It's that simple.
People you can count on.
Yeah.
If you call somebody, they'll show up.
They'll show up.
That's important.
So
that's a question for people watching, I guess. If can you answer that? If I was to ask you, if there's a handful of people you know that if you call them right now and you need them to be there for whatever reason, whatever terrible chore that it name it, are they going to show up? Do you have that in your life? And I think I think a lot of people would say no, if they were honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
everybody has friends, you know, but really, do you have real
if you
friends?
only know them and interact with them on social media,
Yeah.
they are acquaintances.
Not yet best.
They are not your friends.
Yeah.
Friends show up and you guys can shake hands.
And you do things.
Right? Acquaintances are people that you like, but not enough to actually go visit them in person. So the best you're going to get is something on the phone.
Yeah.
Right. You can't rely on an acquaintance.
No.
And you can only rely on some friends.
Sure. That's a fact, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's like we talked about. It's finding that right interdependency within that community and extended family that's really going to make the difference if there's some type of societal collapse. You're never going to have everything you want.
Sure.
You're never going to feel like you have enough supplies, medical supplies, food. You're never going to have enough.
Right.
So you can focus on growing your skill set and strengthening your community. That's going to be a huge win if you can get embedded into the right community that has the same, that shares your values and principles, and allows you to become interdependent with them.
Yeah,
you know, that's where you want to be.
I like that a lot. All right. Anything else? What other things could we possibly expect? You told me a story about where was it? They ran out of lighters, and where was that?
Not my story. I shared it. Since I got the story, I got that from what's his name? T-Jack Survival. Tyler White. Yeah. He's the one who told me about it, and he's right. He's right. I had to go look it up and see for myself. It was in Serbo, Croatia, Bosnia, somewhere over there. And one of the first things they ran out of, as you know, I would say a first world nation, almost second first world nation.
Debatable.
Well, I mean, they're coming out of the old Eastern Bloc.
Yeah.
They were on their way.
Sure.
But after the collapse, one of the things they ran out of was lighters and matches.
Can't start a fire.
Can't start a fire. So
how would you start a fire if you didn't have a lighter, didn't have matches, you didn't have all the stuff you're used to starting fires with, and you couldn't heat your home because there was no propane, there was no electricity? What would you do?
So I really liked his approach to it. He wasn't looking to do a friction fire because he wants to impress all of his friends at the campsite. It's like, what are you going to do if you run out of matches and lighters?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Quick?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that pretty quick in the standpoint of within the first few days. No, it was after a month or two.
Yeah. Everybody's still smoking. Cigarettes start to run out. Lighters go run out.
But you get that Eastern European winter, you're going to be starting a lot of fires. I mean, it gets cold over there.
Yeah.
So they ran out of fires real quick.
Yeah.
They ran out of fire fuel real quick. They were burning furniture and
I think fortunately where we live, I think we live kind of in the Goldilocks zone, in my opinion. It doesn't get that cold. You could have no heat in your house. It's going to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But you could have no heat in your house, and as long as you have warm blankets, sleeping bags, stuff to get into at night, you're not going to freeze to death.
Where we live, get it away with layers, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to be
where
great,
we live,
but I can put on the clothes and the blankets. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
If you start getting north of the Mason-Dixon line, or
not the same.
Not the same.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to figure out a winter's worth of fuel if there's a real shortage.
If the electricity stops pumping, the propane stops flowing. All of that stuff, and one. The crazy thing is to think about is just one glitch, like diesel fuel running out, affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy? Like how fragile the system is.
It's fragile because it's centralized.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we've been centralizing out of greed and malicious intent.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where you had a bunch of local and regional distributors, and you didn't have as many 18-wheeler trucks on the road. You would have vans, and you would have pickup trucks making deliveries to stores. Now everything's an 18-wheeler. Yeah. Because everything's coming, I'm exaggerating, but everything's coming from Walmart in Arkansas, right? Yeah. It's just coming from one or two distribution places. What happens if they decide to stop working for pick a reason, COVID, you know,
Yeah.
I don't like your hair, whatever reason, you know, nowadays people do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, centralizing makes it makes what infrastructure you do have, while profitable and convenient and easy to control when things are going well, it's devastating to regionally. It's devastating if there's an issue in that one place.
thing.
There's zero redundancy in this.
Yeah.
Mega farms are bad. Yeah, I don't like the practice, you know, how they treat the animals for sure, right? But at the end of the day, mega farms are bad because you should have small farms. Like we're in Georgia. This is arguably one of the most fertile regions on Earth.
Yeah.
On Earth.
Yeah.
And we import our vegetables.
Right.
Why? There's no reason for this.
Why are we doing that? Why don't we just get it from right here?
The United States needs absolutely zero imports.
Mm-hmm.
We need zero, maybe some raw materials on the industrial side, but we're food secure. We used to be food secure. We used to be energy secure. Mm-hmm. And we're the only military as of today that can project its force. We're the only true force projection military out there. So, once we started dabbling in the global market and outsourcing production and this and acquisition, it's like, dude, you're hoping China's going to give you that life-saving medication. Feels a little dumb now, doesn't it?
Feels pretty stupid.
Feels a little dumb now.
Uh-huh.
That was the norm. A lot of countries fall prey to that.
Mm.
A lot of countries fall prey to that. They start outsourcing their stuff, you know. But again, we live in Georgia. Look around.
Yeah.
There's enough farmland here to feed everybody in the state.
Yeah.
We don't even need to import.
Do it locally.
Yeah, do it locally. We could beef and veggies. And people have to come down off their horse a little bit, just a little bit, and accept that maybe you won't get some vegetables and fruit out of season.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wild.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so
you can't have your orange today.
My grandparents would, if they would walk into and they're long gone, but if they walk into the grocery store now, they wouldn't recognize any of the vegetables that are in there. Those aren't the same species that they grew.
Right.
The carrots are different. The tomatoes are different. Still carrots, still tomatoes, but they're different species that are being imported. But we live in Georgia. I mean, I'm just looking out your window, but if I just put food out in that one pasture right there, we'd all eat for the year,
right?
You know,
yeah.
We can do that, and I'd encourage folks, if you're fearing for a collapse, get off the system.
Yeah,
you know, you don't have to go off grid, but get with an interdependent community. Start your own farming network. Start your own farmers market. It's 100% doable. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was, honestly. I looked at it like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's like when you hear them say, hey, just start your own social media platform. You're like, oh, just like that? Right?
You don't like this one. Make your own.
Make your own.
Sure.
But
I have one follower. It's me.
It's me. Hey, friend.
I'll follow you.
but when it comes to stuff like your basic life staples, 100% you don't need anybody outside but you and your friends. Mm. You guys can 100% grow all your own food. You can 100% accommodate, you know, water for everybody's families. 100%. It's totally doable. Build it into your schedule. Build it into your habit, and you don't even notice it. Like this year, my garden size doubled. Next year, it'll triple.
Yeah.
And I'm moving towards having, and it just isn't hard to do. I can get on YouTube and crack the Da Vinci Code on any of my gardening problems.
How to grow.
Like, pick it, and then I type in organically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not pushing the organic agenda, but organic farming is easy. It is easy to do, especially at our level. I don't think the technique keeps up with, you know,
massive
like production level farming. Okay, but certainly my family, your family, and pick a family, we could do organic farming. It keeps the fertile, you know, the poisons and all that stuff out of there. It's totally easy to do. And then we preserve what, you know, pick a percentage, preserve that for the winter, mm-hmm. and then whatever's left over, you know, trade, sell. Easy. Yeah. You can do this in a subdivision. Everybody can have a garden in their backyard.
For sure.
Chickens.
You'd have to be willing to do that, though. That's the problem that I foresee, is how many people are actually willing to do that.
Well, I hate to be blunt. If you're not willing to do it, don't come to my house.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. I just envision, I have this vision of the neighborhood, right? This big, huge subdivision with all the people living in it, living their lives, doing their jobs, all this stuff. How many of those people are willing to put in the time, the effort, not just to take care of the garden, but to learn about how to take care of the garden, to buy the tools, equipment.
Well, I think 5 years ago, I would have said Harley, none of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think that's increasing.
But I think at the end of 2022, going into 2023, I bet there's a lot more people in these neighborhoods willing to,
put some time
in light of the obviousness of our situation, are willing to rethink that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I don't know. I maybe. Yeah, I hope so. I think there's a lot more. I don't think there's enough.
See, everybody thinks, you know, sometimes it is, but everybody thinks evil is some big demon with a battle axe, screaming and that, and it's not. It's super easy, right? It's easy and it tastes good and it feels good and it tells you everything's gonna be okay. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
That's how evil slips in. Evil is easy, and the people that perpetrate this and try to get, you know, populations dependent on them, they slip that ease in there.
Yeah.
If I wanted to cripple a town, like just, and I mean,
how would you do it?
If I had unlimited U.S. tax dollars, right?
Yeah.
And I really wanted to cripple, say, Atlanta, the easiest way to do it, where I would get virtually zero pushback, is I would absolutely guarantee 3 meals a day for everybody in that town.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, you're getting 3 meals a day, right? And after a couple of years of that, here's what's going to happen. I don't have to go to Ingles. I don't have to go to Kroger. I got my 3 meals.
Yeah.
Ingles, Kroger's goes out of business.
Yeah.
Or if they stay in business, well, they're going to start selling less, so they're going to start cutting back on the trucks. And then eventually they go away, and there's nothing but distribution systems. And then after a couple of years of that, when I realized you have zero infrastructure, you've stopped using your infrastructure, you took the free meal over the paid meal. After a few years, I'm like, all right, hey, you like that meal? Do what I say. No? Okay. Well,
No more meal.
No more meal. That's it. It's
Easy
that
as
simple.
that.
If I want to cripple a country, I will absolutely rain welfare on you.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Haiti.
Sounds a little like communism.
Well, you know, yeah, there's that, but you look at how some of these, and the U.S. is certainly guilty of this. Haiti is an excellent example. We are destroying that country by helping it.
Leave
them alone. They're fine.
Yeah, they'll figure it out if you leave them alone.
The Haitians are fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. They know how to do stuff. They're not dumb.
Mm-hmm.
They're perfectly capable of managing their own business, right? Stay out of it.
Yeah.
So if I was a local Haitian, and I'm not, but if I were, and let's say I was going to start a business to provide power or public sanitation, because look around you, that's very much so needed everywhere in Haiti. I would absolutely get underbid by all the free crap coming in, and it's just crap.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Half of it doesn't work. Most of the foreign aid I've seen in these third world countries, now I haven't been to Haiti, but most of the times I've seen foreign aid come into these countries, it's pure garbage.
Really?
It's garbage. It doesn't work. It might work a season, and it's a whole lot of a scam.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, for instance, I was going to do, we call them med caps. Me, a bunch of folks, we get a whole bunch of medical supplies. I'll go into some third world dump and I'll set up free sick call. Well, that's great. We're treating people, but 2 things you need to consider. 1, I'm not staying. So I can't treat anything that's chronic beyond, you know, my stay.
Yeah.
All right. 2, I've put out of business the doctors and the pharmacists in the area by flooding the zone.
That's true.
Right. So when I'm forced to do med caps, you know, it's like the U.S. You're gonna make me love you. I will help you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm forced to do stuff like that, typically I'll go hire local pharmacists, local doctors, and I'll buy out of their inventory, right, to run this mission so that they're propped up and not shut down. But I don't think you get that in places outside. So anyway, when you look inside the United States, that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you want to kill a town, douse it in welfare.
Yeah.
And they'll stop using the infrastructure that they needed. The best example I can give you is if I guaranteed you 3 meals a day, in about 5 years,
I get really used to that.
You wouldn't have a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be distribution areas, and you know, there used to be warehouses just for Atlanta. Those will all close because it's all free now. Right? that's what they do. So when that collapses, it's pretty ugly.
Yeah.
It's pretty ugly. All of a sudden, boom, nobody's got food. And that's what I saw in Baghdad. Is over the years, the people became more and more dependent on centralized distribution and less on, trade kind of economies. And so when the collapse happened, it hit hard.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Saddam Hussein was a nice guy. I'm not. But he got a lot of gruff for not distributing foreign aid to his people. It's like, yeah, he's trying to develop his economy.
His own economy.
Yeah, he's trying to get them to happen on its own. Now, the fact that he used it to buy Ferraris and stuff, that whatever. But look at Russia.
Yeah.
Well, talk about big backfire on us. Russia right now has been preparing for Western sanctions for years. And the way they prepared for that was independence and interdependency. Everything's done locally. Everything's
They
done
don't need
regionally.
anybody else.
Yeah. So it was laughable when the U.S. tried to put sanctions on them. It's like, so they don't get McDonald's and Coca-Cola. So now not only are they independent, now they're fit and healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
Darn it.
Joke's on us.
Yeah.
So
That's
local
crazy.
economies, interdependent communities, and if everybody in your community could commit to however long your winter is, I'll just say 3 months because that's where we're at. To 3 months, it doesn't even have to be good food, but stockpile food, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
Right? Have weapons, be able to provide for the defense of your community, security, not defense. Crime's going to be
The 3 month window you're saying is to outlast the shock, the implosion that's happening. You could outlast that in the 3 month period.
I think so, because again, you won't be alone, and if you're in a city of 10,000, now that's a small city, but that's 9,999 other people that need the same thing you need. There will be a concerted community effort to restore civil services.
Sure.
It's in the meantime you got to get over public sanitation, security, and don't starve.
Got to figure that out.
And medicine.
Sure.
Medicine for those who need.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, cool. We've probably jabbered on long enough.
Sure.
Awesome. Leave lots of comments, guys. Ask us lots of questions. That'd be cool. Start a little conversation going there, and we'll be in the comments making sure we answer any and all questions. If you disagree, fantastic. Do that too. I'd like to hear that as well because we don't know everything. But hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and we'll see you next time.